Hey everyone, it's been over 2 minutes and I haven't been raped yet. But who am I to say what reality is? Stop playing break free from your chains, to break free from your cage. What we don't want to do is go back to a traditionalist world. Hi, I'm Diana Davison. Last week I was talking about victimhood and victim politics, and I was going to talk about identity politics this week. But an article got published on a site that I really like, so I'm happy to give you a link below to Brendan O'Neill's article on feminism and why it has had such a grand effect, such an influential and successful appeal to culture and to the direction of society. Now, this is something that has really puzzled men's rights activists for some time, because when you engage with feminists, they just spout a bunch of nonsense, and it's obvious nonsense. It's absurd. And they talk about lived experience trumping, other so-called reality, like reality is so-called. And it's difficult to understand how they've gotten away with it. And this has led to some conspiracy theory kind of thinking, right? That's what they get accused of quite often. And I think that it's important for men's rights activists to really be concerned with who their enemy is. And this article by Brendan O'Neill, I think, is really important because he identifies the wave upon which feminism is riding in order to accomplish the things that would otherwise just be laughed off as insane. But it's not. Why? That's the question, why? And I think this article answers it quite well. In part, the new feminism can be seen as mission creep, an old movement looking for a new role now that its original aims have largely been achieved. This would explain why it is so obsessed with culture, with how people think and speak, and with what words they use or images they view. Having achieved equality in the legal and work spheres, some feminists are now moving into the realms of culture and even thought, where their politics, or any politics for that matter, has no place. The end result is often intolerance, a demand not only that society remove all the barriers to women's engagement in public life, which is a good demand, but also that people and art and culture think about and depict women in a particular, correct way, which is an illiberal demand. Right now, mission creep. Mission creep in the field of feminism, which is pretty much just an academic field. They're getting themselves involved in the sciences and stuff. But what they need to do, any revolutionary needs to remain relevant. So, like he identifies, they've accomplished their main goals, and so they're going to be reaching further and further. But that still doesn't explain how they get away with absurdity in the realm of academics. Feminists themselves claim the new feminism is on the up because women in the West still live in a sea of misogyny, which is simply not true. Men's rights activists, the saddest creatures in the political firmament, claim the new feminism proves influential women are hell-bent on making life hard for blokes, which is also unconvincing and borders on a conspiracy theory. It also raises an immediate question which very few of the discussants of the new feminism seem able to answer. How have these new feminists become so influential? What is it about society, rather than the new feminists themselves, which has seen new feminist ideas being so fulsomely embraced by officialdom and elites? The issue is not the apparently terrifying influence of new feminists, but the receptiveness to their arguments and prejudices among those who oversee political, public, and media life in the 21st century West. Now, I have said before that fighting feminism as a gendered issue is not going to work for men. And the things that are problematic that need to be dealt with in a more immediate sense are things best dealt with on an academic level. So the people involved in the fields being affected, so lawyers, academics, and they're invading economics, they're invading science, and those are the people who are best placed to try and protect their fields of interest. They've come up with a set of lingo that makes conversation impossible, and then they justify your lack of understanding by saying that it's lived experience, and that's why you don't get it. right? That's not why you don't get it. You don't get it because it doesn't make sense. But the reason they get away with it is the thing that Brendan O'Neill is seeking in this article. And it's something that men's rights activists need to be concerned about if they actually care about changing anything and about accomplishing their own supposed goals. My view is that this new feminism is best understood not as a fresh uprising or as an independent movement, but as the gloss on Western society's own collapse of faith in itself. What we are witnessing is not the rise of a new ideology or any kind of grassroots upheaval, but the instinctive formulation of a cover, an explanation for the modern West's abandonment of the ideas of reason, order, autonomy, and truth, and of the Enlightenment itself. So what is Brendan O'Neill talking about here? He's talking about postmodernism. This has been a problem in academia for some time, and people of the stature of Daniel Dennett have been trying to address this problem and not been having much success. Just for a summary of the academic criticism of postmodernism, and for those who don't know what it is, you should look it up on Wikipedia. I'll put a link below. Daniel Dennett, and this is from Wikipedia, has said, "Postmodernism, the school of thought that proclaimed there are no truths, only interpretations, has largely played itself out in absurdity. But it has left behind a generation of academics in the humanities disabled by their distrust of the very idea of truth and their disrespect for evidence, settling for conversations in which nobody is wrong and nothing can be confirmed, only asserted with whatever style you can muster." So Daniel Dennett has been dealing with this problem of postmodernism infecting institutions of education for some time. And he is a fairly respected philosopher. He's very highly esteemed and does many TED Talks, which you should also check out. But he wrote a paper in response to a colleague of his who he has a fair bit of respect for. This was done in 1998, and I'll give a link to this. And he's trying to address the core issues of the problem with postmodernism and why it needs to be dealt with. And he's trying to do it respectfully because one of his friends actually promotes this. So he says, "When philosophers argue about truth, they are arguing about how not to inflate the truth about truth into the truth about truth. Some absolutistic doctrine that makes indefensible demands on our systems of thought. It is in this regard similar to debates about, say, the reality of time, the reality of the past. There are some deep, sophisticated, worthy philosophical investigations into whether, properly speaking, the past is real. Opinion is divided, but you entirely misunderstand the point of these disagreements if you suppose that they undercut claims such as the following. Life first emerged on this planet more than 3,000 million years ago. The Holocaust happened during World War II. Jack Ruby shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald at 11:21 a.m. Dallas time, November 24th, 1963. These are truths about events that really happened. Their denials are falsehoods. No sane philosopher has ever thought otherwise, though in the heat of battle they have sometimes made claims that could be so interpreted. Richard Rorty deserves his large enthralled readership in the arts and humanities, and in the humanistic social sciences, but when his readers enthusiastically interpret him as encouraging their postmodernist skepticism about truth, they trundle down paths he himself has refrained from traveling. When I press him on these points, he concedes that there is indeed a useful concept of truth that survives intact, after all the corrosive philosophical objections have been duly entered. This serviceable, modest concept of truth, Rorty acknowledges, has its uses. When we want to compare two maps of the countryside for reliability, for instance, or when the issue is whether the accused did or did not commit the crime as charged. Even Richard Rorty then acknowledges the gap and the importance of the gap between appearance and reality, between those theatrical exercises that may entertain us without pretense of truth-telling, and those that aim for and often hit the truth. He calls it a vegetarian concept of truth. Very well then, let's all be vegetarians about the truth. Scientists never wanted to go the whole hog anyway. So what happens when you indulge these postmodernists? Well, Richard Dawkins had something to say about the issue.
Or then there's postmodernism. I'm just going to quote one example. This is from, I forget which book of mine this is, actually. I think it's, oh, I know, yes, it's a book review of a wonderful book by Sokal and Breakmore. Sokal was the physicist who did that splendid spoof article which fooled all the postmodernists and left them with egg on their face. The feminist philosopher Luce Irigaray is another who is given whole chapter treatment by Sokal and Breakmore. In a passage reminiscent of a notorious feminist description of Newton's Principia as a rape manual. Newton's Principia is a rape manual. Irigaray argues that E equals mc squared is a sexed equation. Why? Because it privileges the speed of light. Privileges is one of their favorite words, I dare say you've noticed. It privileges the speed of light over other speeds that are vitally necessary. Just as typical of the school of thought under examination is Irigaray's thesis on fluid mechanics. Fluids, you see, have been unfairly neglected. Masculine physics privileges rigid, solid things. Her American expositor, Catherine Hales, made the mistake of re-expressing Irigaray's thoughts in comparatively clear language. For once, we get a reasonably unobstructed look at the emperor, and yes, he has no clothes. Quote, "The privileging of solid over fluid mechanics, and indeed the inability of science to deal with turbulent flow at all, she attributes to the association of fluidity with femininity. Whereas men have sex organs that protrude and become rigid, women have openings that leak menstrual blood and vaginal fluids. From this perspective, it is no wonder that science has not been able to arrive at a successful model for turbulence." The problem of turbulent flow cannot be solved because the conception of fluids and of women have been formulated so as necessarily to leave unarticulated remainders. End of quote. You don't have to be a physicist to smell out the daffy absurdity of this kind of argument. The tone of it has become all too familiar. But it helps to have Sokal and Breakmore on hand to tell us the real reason why turbulent flow is a hard problem. The Navier-Stokes equations are difficult to solve.
I don't have a solution, but I do think that one of the best first approaches would be to react to the bizarre statements and assertions that they make with something like this.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Right, so about now would be when I do my rape joke of the week, but I've been having some insomnia for the last few days, and I'm kind of tired, so...
Can't sleep. Have you tried dating Bill Cosby? What? Too soon?
Yes, Fraser. Too soon. Too soon. I guess one more thing. To feminists who like to spout off about their lived experience, it's my lived experience that your lived experience is bullshit. Have a lovely day.